In this video, I'm going to be talking about Honey Honey Honey, a visual novel developed by OGG-kan and translated by Shiravune. Honey 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 is an odd visual novel to describe. I guess you can call it a moege nukige mix with a heavy emphasis on very strange, quirky comedy. A lot of it is on the characters themselves, but some of it is on the pretty unique setting. What got me particularly interested in this visual novel is that its unique setting and how it kind of feels like a visual novel version of an anime called Shimoneta. The basic idea is that long before the story started, there were strict laws made to prevent sexual harassment. The idea is that unless you're dating, males and females are not allowed to physically interact and touch each other in public, and they have to maintain at least 6 feet of distance from each other, which for reference is the same amount of distance you had to keep during 2020 and 2021 in real life. Even if you want to properly get into a relationship, you literally have to apply for going out to the higher-ups. These restrictions are even more strict in co-ed schools. There are color-coded lanes that guys and girls are forced to walk in, blue lanes for guys and pink lanes for girls. There's even color-coded tables, so guys and girls aren't even allowed to sit at the same lunch table. Even in classrooms, desks are very far apart, with all the guys in one column and the girls in another. If any of the rules are broken, a group called the judges will take action and take you in. The main character, Shun, is someone who is transferring to the main school of the setting. He has no friends and mostly just wants to be left alone and keep distance from people, especially girls due to his history with the sexual harassment rules. However, the main heroines definitely do a good job making sure he's not allowed to stay to himself, because they're all very assertive in their own ways in getting his attention. Speaking of main heroines, there are only 3 of them, so I can go into a little bit more detail them than my usual video. Tsukasa is Shun's childhood friend. She has that kind of uncommon trope where as a kid, she looked like a guy, so she got mistaken as one. Thankfully, that part was resolved fairly quickly. Her dad was actually the one who created the gender segregation laws, so she felt obligated to join the school's Love Audit Club. This club is the one that approves students to be in relationships, as well as making improvements so they can enjoy their relationship life. However, Tsukasa's big quirk is her pure, naive, and wild imagination, especially related to sexual stuff. So whenever she reads suggestions submitted by potential student couples, she ends up declining a lot of them due to her assuming the wildest potential sexual situation based on an otherwise normal suggestion. Since she's the sole active member of the Love Audit Club, she does what she feels she should to improve the club as much as she can. So she tries to research love as much as she can while making sure she and the other students stick to the gender segregation and dating rules properly. However, when Shun comes back into her life, she starts to have to consider her not so subtle growing love for him and how it may conflict with staying loyal to the rules. While Tsukasa herself is pretty wholesome, expect a decent amount of crying in her route. Arika is a heroine openly against the gender segregation rules, to the point she's a higher-up in a secret rebellion. Shun gets into a typical accidental pervert scene where he gets a handful of her very early on in the story. Somehow, this accidental pervert scene actually impresses her, especially since it happened in front of Tsukasa's Love Audit Club, so Arika considers Shun a very bold one. After this point, she makes it a point to constantly try to get Shun to join her side of the anti-segregation rebellion, constantly trying to hug his arm in public affectionately. It's to the point where, even when it's not her route, she even helps you get with the girl in question. But in her route, since she's the most overtly assertive of the main 3 heroines, you get with her the fastest and naturally deal with the public relationship consequences more frequently. You also learn some mildly deep things about her in this route, and this is surprisingly wholesome stuff towards the end. Finally, we have Miyuki, who is actually a teacher heroine, but was also Shun's childhood babysitter who he looked up to as a big sister. When around her students, Miyuki's a mature and very helpful teacher that's quite popular among both guys and girls. However, when she gets alone with Shun, she gets not so subtly more affectionate to him. Considering the age gap, the whole previous babysitter thing, and some of the reveals about her, it wouldn't be a stretch to call this the creepiest relationship. Thankfully, her route made great jokes making fun of this aspect of Miyuki, so at least I can get some good laughs out of this route, because otherwise I could not take the actual romance seriously. It wouldn't be a stretch to call Miyuki's route the most ridiculous of the 3, which is saying something. Honey Honey Honey, for better or for worse, is very much on the short side. My total in-game play time was about 11.5 hours reading on full auto mode, even with a visual novel with only 3 heroines. I'd assume it's a lot closer to 6 to 8 hours according to VNDB for a faster reader. The romance is generally on the rushed side, but I don't think the visual novel was aiming for serious relationship developments anyway. While this visual novel was pretty funny, if you were hoping for a more serious, dramatic take upon the gender segregation setting, don't get your hopes up. If anything, expect a kind of weird, degenerate, comedic style. The only other personal flaw I have is how ridiculously big the breast sizes are of the main heroines. Tsukasa's is already pushing it, but Arika and Miyuki straight up have ridiculously sized breasts. I know some people think the bigger the better, but for me, there's a point where breasts just look too big and they end up just looking more goofy instead of hot. Speaking of degeneracy, each heroine has 3 H scenes each in their main story, with 3 extra H scenes unlocked after you finish their route. In conclusion, HoneyHoneyHoney, while not a top tier comedic visual novel or anything, it's still pretty funny, has a pretty unique and weird setting, and even weirder but likable main heroine personalities. Those alone make this visual novel a fun time, at least for me. It is on the shorter side, but if you just want a short-ish visual novel with a comedic take on a potentially interesting setting, or any of the main 3 heroines interest you, feel free to check this visual novel out. You can currently buy HoneyHoneyHoney on Steam and Jorin. If you have any questions about HoneyHoneyHoney or this video, feel free to leave a comment below.